What's up, Unleashed Humans? I wanted to take a minute to talk about molecular hydrogen water and its amazing benefits and therapeutic effects on the human body. It is the latest in cognitive performance, athletic performance and recovery, and free radical destruction, which is what we're all after, right? Now, there has been over 400 published medical studies showing the support and ingestion of molecular hydrogen to be a selective, powerful antioxidant that improves circulation, athletic performance and recovery, metabolism, and cognitive function. And molecular hydrogen has actually been shown to help those with Parkinson's disease and is even showing promising results with those having Alzheimer's disease, which is quite impressive. Now, that's why today's podcast is sponsored by Hivita Hydrogen Infused Sparkling Water, which is the first sparkling hydrogen beverage in the world. It delivers the same amount of antioxidants as an orange without any calories, sweeteners, caffeines, or sugars. It is super tasty without all the nasty artificial flavors, additives, and GMO ingredients. If you're looking to take your brain, performance, and happiness to a whole nother level, I totally recommend checking out Hivita Hydrogen Water. That's Hivita, spelled Hyvida, available in 3 flavors: pure, raspberry, or lemon lime. For Unleashed Human listeners, you can get 10% off your purchase of Hivita by going to Amazon and typing in the promo code UNLEASHED. Again, to receive an extra 10% off, use the promo code UNLEASHED to kick your brain, body, and health into high gear. On this episode, I interviewed Dr. John Jaquish, who has his PhD in biomedical engineering and is the inventor of OSTEOSTRONG and X3 bar, which, if you didn't know, these 2 devices are changing what it means to be strong and fit. These devices produce muscle and strength in ways that put conventional weightlifting to shame, without the risk for injury or hours spent in the gym. With these 2 products, you may never need to visit the gym again. Now, on this episode, we discuss how you can get the body you desire by working out far less and working out much, much smarter. We discuss the science of muscle and all the myths surrounding weightlifting and bro science. We dive into super awesome growth hormone hacks and go into why most people get nutrition completely wrong. I will preface this show by saying my microphone quality is not the greatest in this episode, so please forgive me. With that being said, you are not going to want to miss this episode because this episode might change your life. Strap your seatbelt in, Dorothy, because Dr. John Jaquish comes with content that will blow you away. See you in there.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unleashed Human podcast with your host, Dr. TJ Woodham. Now, today's guest is a PhD in biomedical engineering. He is the inventor of biodensity, which is a device to stop and reverse osteoporosis.
OSTEOSTRONG.
Initially, I was going to get into that.
Called OSTEOSTRONG.
Okay. He also invented the X3 bar, which is a device capable of building muscle much faster than conventional weightlifting in a shorter period of time. Now, if that wasn't enough, he also invented OSTEOSTRONG, which he just said, which is a spinoff of his earlier version, biodensity, right?
Yeah.
And so he's doing this in partnership with Tony Robbins. Now, it's a machine used to increase bone density, posture, balance, and human performance, which in their words is the ultimate biohack, which I love that. That's amazing. He currently sits on the board of directors of American Bone Health and the editorial boards of the Journal of Steroids and Hormonal Science and Diabetes Open. Now, it's my pleasure and honor to have Dr. John Jaquish on the show. Thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's gonna be a blast because I have so many questions for you, man. I've been following you with all the stuff you've been doing for about a year or so. So yeah, it's gonna be good. So I kind of want to tap into your story real quick because it's really cool. I know that you have a background. Your family has a background in engineering, and I'm pretty sure your father had a part in designing and built the lunar rover for NASA. Is that correct? And then also, I know that you started creating stuff for osteogenic loading and these type of machines because of your mother. So you want to go ahead and talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and I want to see if I could fix it. And I saw osteoporosis differently than the experts saw it. They saw it. We have a habit society of any dysfunction is almost treated like a pathogen, or a lot of them are. And whereas like osteoporosis is a deconditioning of bone. So why don't we just recondition it?
Right.
That was just my complete no medical knowledge like approach. Like a muscle gets deconditioned because you're you're sick or you're in bed for extended period of time. You just go and recondition it. You exercise. So why don't we exercise bone? And then there's also a lot of kind of misinformation out there about what exercise does for bone. There's a recommendation given by every academic body of bone health, which says resistance exercise. Well, that's like one of the, it's one of those things in medicine that's really a lousy recommendation because it doesn't come with a dosage. So sort of like aspirin is good for headaches. Well, 5 milligrams or 5,000? 5 milligrams will do nothing. 5,000 will most likely kill you. But, maybe 350, that'll do it. So,
perfect dose.
Right. And that's why we know dosages of different medications. So, and it's called the minimum dose response. So the medical community wants to give you the smallest amount of whatever the intervention is so that you create the intended effect. So when I started, this was like 13 years ago, when I was first speaking with my mother, there was no established minimum dose response for triggering bone growth. But I did find a lot of different points of research that showed high impact was associated with, right. So gymnasts.
Correct. Yeah.
Gymnasts were kind of the answer to this question. They go through incredibly high impacts, which are very repeatable because they practice trying to control the impact moment, which is an out of control moment, but they try and put as much controls in it by practice, by building a skill around absorbing high impact. So in a way, gymnastics is, if you wanted to break it down like that, and there's a lot of different nuances to it, but it is one of the main things is the skill of absorbing high impact forces. So once I realized that, I thought, okay, how do we build a device that will give us the benefit of high impact without the risks? And that's what OSTEOSTRONG is now. And the earlier prototype, it lacked a lot of things, improper biomechanics, but
it's biomedical.
Now with OSTEOSTRONG, it's robotic, it's touchscreen based.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a session coach with you, but it's completely touchscreen. You see in front of you what's happening. It's a phenomenal system.
So most of OSTEOSTRONG, is it more like it's like isometric contraction? Like
no, it's a good question.
Or
no, we really do not like the term isometrics, mostly because there's so much research that word is basically ruined by really lousy studies that were done in the 60s and 70s. And it's also inappropriate because isometric means no, in Latin means no movement, but there is movement. It's compression of bone. So I would call them compressive instead of isometric.
Interesting.
Ultimately, like a lot of isometrics that were studied in the 60s and 70s were like wall sits. Where you kind of like sit like you have an invisible chair and your back is against the wall. So you're engaging your quadriceps, and that's an example we talked before the show started about electron myography. So electron myography is sky high, but you won't grow from that. You will develop the ability to fire more muscle in that position, which is a skill. That's a neurological change, but you're not going to have any hypertrophy from that. You're definitely not going to get any bone density from that. So isometrics were really seen as something that just doesn't do anything that we're looking for. Like this isometrics for the sake of building a skill of isometrics is just kind of like, we don't need that. That doesn't solve anything. So they're largely considered sort of a failed exercise. And the problem is in a lot of these research studies, they don't even describe the angle of inclusion behind the joint. So you don't know what range of motion they're in or why. It's just like these isometric contractions took place and the effect was nothing. So it's just become a big distraction.
Now, you have multiple OsteoStrong machines, right? It's not just one. You guys have like a life.
Yeah, there's 4 in the circuit. And it was really important to do it that way. Yeah, the original prototype was kind of like everything kind of put in a universal, and that's sort of like a one size fits all garment. Really, one size fits nobody. So, because every movement had to be compromised for the sake of the other movements.
Right.
So while that was convenient, sort of, it just didn't go. Yeah.
Are you guys also, are you testing like different kind of like markers too? Like you guys have screens on them, correct?
Right.
Different kind of like athletic performance markers and that kind of thing.
It's functional bone performance is we're training individuals to absorb high impact level forces. So we're getting a neurological change first. And as we're compressing tissue on its axis, so this is the axis of bone, right? We compress end to end, and with the clavicle, with all long bones in the body, we end to end compress the bone and trigger osteogenesis. So as the bones become compressed, then they actually shorten briefly, and then just 5 seconds or so, and then when they spring back into position, they're stimulated to pull in minerals and recalcify, build more small walls inside of the bone to reinforce the microarchitecture and become more powerful. And so people typically are building more powerful bone week by week when they do this.
And so you're seeing people gain like massive strength over a few weeks, like compared to the conventional going to the gym, getting jacked. And
so the OsteoStrong locations call it sometimes strength. Well, you ask 10 personal trainers to define strength and you'll get 12 different answers. So I don't like calling it strength. I call it functional bone performance, and that's what it says on the printout that you get at the end of the session. That's a more accurate descriptor. So yeah, strength. That way, I don't really have to look at what the definition of strength is.
So it's probably pretty safe to say that if your bone is strong, then your muscles will also get much stronger. Correct?
Bone is if you have a low bone density, it's a limiter on muscle growth. So because of neural inhibition, like you can't squeeze your own fist hard enough to break your own finger, right?
Right.
The neural inhibitory process will make sure that doesn't happen. So like if your bones are weak, you can't engage the muscle you have as much. And then thereby going the other way, the stronger the bone, the more muscle you can engage.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. Have you found that you'll see like really big guys come in and try OsteoStrong, and then a smaller guy will actually outwork them that's been on OsteoStrong, that's been doing OsteoStrong?
All the time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you ever see
every day? I see it every day.
And then so they're probably pissed off, aren't they? The bodybuilders like, what the heck?
I did a session with Cedric McMillan, who is one of the largest and strongest bodybuilders. I think off season he's like 320 pounds. He's about an inch taller than me. I'm 6 foot. He's 6'1". He's just like the most muscular. When we went through the OsteoStrong circuit of devices, I was actually, my power output, my functional bone performance was greater than his was. He couldn't believe it, and I just said, look, this is something different. This is looking at bone. This is looking at bone and the ability to switch on muscle. I can just switch on more than you can. That's it.
And I know you talk about, there's a difference between like typical bodybuilders' muscles and a gymnast, right? So like, what is it? You talk about sarcoplasmic muscle growth and myocardial, right? Right. So you can kind of talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So what most people who lift do is they create sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So in the whole like micro tear thing is, it exists, but it's nothing to do with growth. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's just a phenomenon that happens.
Right.
So when someone's training, the standard way of training, they'll exhaust the fuels in the cell. First, they run out of ATP, then glycogen, which is turning into ATP, and then creatine phosphate, and then they've lost the fuel required for contraction. And like that, the quicker the loss, the greater the stimulus sent to the central nervous system. Okay, we got to replace all this fuel, and we might want to add a little bit more because we lost that real fast. And this is why this is part of the reason why the most powerful stimuli to muscle is the quickest to exhaustion. So like I see somebody who's doing like set after set after set, and I'm just like, yeah, you're not doing anything. Yeah. It's by definition, the whole multi-set thing is here's a tangent. I told you I go off on tangents. The multiple set thing, like the only reason people do multiple sets when they lift is because the stimulus is garbage. Like you don't need to do multiple sets in the sunlight to get a tan. You're not like running inside for 5 minutes to like, splash water on your face and then run back outside for more sun exposure. And you need to do that 10 times. Otherwise you won't get a tan. Like that doesn't exist. Why? You only need to expose very intense light to the skin once, like one lighting cycle. Well, why does one work? Why do you need to do sets in the gym? It's because when we exercise, we overload joints and host the opportunity for damage in the joints. And most of exercise soreness is just joint damage. And then we underload muscle because our muscle is really only efficient in the stronger range of motion. So
that's the question I have for you as far as the stronger range of motion and weaker range of motion. You're not talking about concentric, eccentric loading, are you? So like when you say stronger range of motion, are you talking about full extension on, like, let's say you're doing chest press? Are you talking about all the way to in range of motion?
I'm talking about just short of full extension. Because once you lock the joint, once you go all the way, then you've actually unloaded the muscle and loaded the bone, which is just the bone as opposed to both, which is it depends on what you're doing. If you're at OSTEOSTRONG using the Spectrum devices, that's what the devices are called, then that's okay. But if you're using X3, then no, you don't want to do that. You want to keep constant tension on the muscle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Actually, that's a great leading statement. Like, so you created X3 bar, right?
Right.
X3 bar, if someone were to just look at it, they'd be like, oh, that's a bar and a band, right? But it does a lot more than that. I've been watching videos, I've been, doing my homework on all this stuff. What is it that X3 does? Like that, like,
so
great?
It is a bar and a band, and then there's a plate which creates a second ground where the bands go underneath to protect your ankles. But what the observation I made when doing the research in London is I looked at, we did a trial in London of the bone density devices, and I looked at what these people were putting through their hip joint. And then I compared that to the averages of Americans, which is a big database held by the American College of Sports Medicine. So there was an average 7-fold difference between weak to strong range or full range exercise weight selection versus what we were able to do with this bone loading, which tells me that in the stronger range of motion, people are 7 times stronger. So I thought, okay, like now that I know this tells me weightlifting is just a waste of time, because we have so much more capability to absorb force into a muscle, but we don't use it because we're too busy damaging our joints, which is pretty much what it is. Whatever weight you pick when you lift, it's going to be the weight that you can handle in the weak range of motion, which is where you're firing the least amount of muscle and you're damaging the joint the most, or potentially damaging the joint the most. And I know people, I never damage my joints. I've been lifting for years. And I'm like, sure. Yeah. Let's do an MRI. Let's look at inflammation. Let's do a C-reactive protein test after you go lift. So.
Have you guys been doing that?
Huh?
C-reactive protein. Have you guys been testing that after workouts? A good amount.
Yeah,
been doing
just for fun, just to see like somebody.
That's pretty interesting, man. I've never actually heard of that.
Yeah.
You guys just do like blood
the
tests
idea
after, like during, or
inflammation is like a natural part of, existing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of natural parts of existing. Acne is a natural thing. That doesn't mean you want more of it, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Ingrown toenails are natural. It doesn't mean you want to like try and have more of those. Right. So yeah, is inflammation good? Well, it's too simple of a question. So ultimately, just destroying your joints while you're lifting, this is part of the reason why we don't see many muscular people in their 60s or 70s, because they just have so much pain they can't. They just can't.
I mean, they're repetitively destroying their joints, right? I mean, see, I'm kind of guilty of that, man, because like I used to lift, I used to squat like over 400 pounds, and honestly, man, after a while, my knees really couldn't take it, and I knew I was just, and some of it came down to form. I was going at parallel, whatever, blah blah blah. We won't get into that, but after a certain time, it's like, man, this is not sustainable. Like, why would I even do this?
No,
so just, I don't.
You want to work out like that? You got a couple years. And then, you probably won't be able to work out again.
Right. Well, and that's my other question. So with X3, do people get sore? Is it a different sore? Do they get sore? Like, is it, no?
No. So, I mean, here's the bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this bar is the same spec as like an Olympic bar. So like it's heavy, it's powerful. And then the hooks can handle well over 500 pounds. And then, so here's the elite band, just for size, you can see the side of the elite band hooks through there. If I hold this band right here and I put my pinky, because it's doubled over, like when you do the chest.
That's really thick, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the thickness of it's thicker than my pinky. Like this is a pound of layered latex.
Well, so most of those bands are made out of petroleum, right?
No.
Petroleum.
Like this is what the cheaper.
No, not X3. I'm saying typically.
Oh yeah, right.
Cheaper ones, right? And that's made out of latex.
A Walmart
right?
band costs like $20.
Right.
Yeah, those are made out of petroleum, and then
are those the ones that typically snap?
Say it again.
Are those typically the ones that snap? The petroleum-based ones, or just cheap as hell?
Yeah, and they also stretch out. They get longer every time you use them.
Right.
So people are like, I'm getting a lot stronger. You're like, no, stretching your band out. Yeah. It would be okay if you got taller every time you used it, but that's
right. Yeah. But yours is latex, right? And you have it's like a thick, like a different type of latex, or like polymer?
It's layered. So instead of snapping, they fray like a rope.
Oh, gotcha.
That way nobody gets hurt. If your band starts to fray, you just replace it.
Okay. And is that the strongest? The one you
that is the most powerful one, yeah.
Okay. How many are there? How many different types?
There's 5. It comes with 4, and then this one is the elite.
Okay.
And that comes separately.
Okay.
Yeah, and the elite for it's really, really strong people.
Is that like, do you work your way up to that? Like, let's say, I'd say I'm a decently strong guy. I'd probably start like maybe 2 under that one. Why I just start with the first one, the very first band, just to get used to it? What would you suggest? I mean, I'm 5'10", 175, 80 pounds on a good day.
you wouldn't need the elite band right out of the gate. The other band is like 300 pounds at the top.
Okay.
The next highest one that comes with the system. But also remember, you're 7 times stronger in that strongest range at the top than you think you are. But you also want to go high reps. And the reason you want to go high reps, I actually have it on the board behind me, but you can't really see it. So when you look at like strength curves, so this is really like the force capability curve. So, 7x what you may be done in the weak, mid, and strong range. So it's not a linear relationship. It doesn't just go on a diagonal. It's like you're really weak in the weak range. You're a little bit stronger in the medium range, but in the strong range, you're really strong. So the reason you want to go, so like the latex is linear. The more you stretch it, it doesn't have a curve, or if it does, it's like very, very slight. Whereas it doesn't match up to what human capability is, which is why we want to go higher repetitions, because the most important thing is fatiguing the stronger range of motion.
Got it.
And then so like when I do it, like I use the 500-pound band, I'll go, let's say 15, 17 repetitions when I go almost to lockout. But then, like I go to there, and then I can't get there anymore. And so then my repetitions are short. And so I go halfway. And so I'm holding 300 pounds in those reps. And my last couple repetitions, maybe 1 or 2, they're in the weak range, but the muscle's completely exhausted to a far higher degree than it ever would be with a weight, right? Because I've been able to diminish the range with diminishing force.
Okay.
And then the last couple repetitions, I might only be using 100 pounds. So absolutely devastating set, like exhausted. But then when I'm done and, the next day comes around, there's no soreness. Why would there be?
Let's go again, right?
Well, no, you want to wait 36 hours. Protein synthesis takes 36 hours to occur in a muscle. That's based on biopsy studies. So like you don't really get better than that. So like I just want to make sure I wait 36. So I hit every muscle every 48 hours.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Now with bands, there's a whole physiological response with bands, right? Like the shaking changes things. Like,
oh yeah.
I know you talk about growth hormone. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Right. So everything I do, I want to, instead of saying, and I said this before we started, sports performance industry often looks to electron myography to answer a lot of questions as like what the best exercise is. The problem with that is there's no real relationship between growth and electron myography. So electron myography is really strong in that wall sit I was talking about, but it's no growth happens. So there's no association there. There's no causal relationship. Why are we looking at it unless we're just trying to get a muscle to fire? Now, electron myography is great if you're trying to rehab like a stroke patient and get some muscle to fire and you got some reading on that. So it's a great tool, but like it's not the answer to hypertrophy at all. So what we really need to look at is what are the things that we do that have the body upregulate an anabolic growth factor. And when that happens, that's pretty crystal clear what your body's doing. Like you need to create an environment so the central nervous system goes, oh, well, we need more muscle. So let's have an anabolic response. Your central nervous system connected to your endocrine system, and it makes those chemical changes. And this is part of my nutritional approach too. Like it's like counting calories is just like, it's insanity. It's just like electromyography. It's not correct. What's far more important is what hormones are being released when and why, and how do we control those? Because if you do that, you don't ever have to be hungry, but you can have, all visible abdominals, be super lean, be, as fit as you want to be, and as muscular as you want to be. within like normal reason, other than, totally chemically enhanced people. But that's losing popularity, by the way. I don't think people care about that anymore.
What, just looking good?
Just giant bodybuilding kind of.
Yeah. Man, it's disgusting, man. It was like stumps. Like who? Like, you know what? I mean, I think when Arnold was doing it, he looked good, because he
wasn't that big.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
When you look back on it now, they all said they were like 6'2", 6'5", 6'8", and 250, 280 pounds or whatever. But I think when you look back and you realize that these guys were not 6'2", they were more like 5'10", and they were probably not 250 pounds, maybe like 210. Yeah. So they look more like the classic bodybuilders, because that's a class of bodybuilding today, classic or men's physique, which is basically just being in shape. And I think it's really funny because these guys get the better like supplement endorsement deals and stuff like that, because people want to look at them. They look great. They look healthy. Yeah. They have narrow waist. They have chiseled faces. Like it's just a more marketable thing. So yeah, I think the giant bodybuilder kind of thing, while it even, chemicals or not, to be a big, huge muscular guys carrying around a lot of muscle, it takes years to build that kind of muscle. And like Ben Pekulski says, the physique guys, they just don't want to put in the work. Maybe they just don't want to live that lifestyle.
Right.
And just, I don't know. And I asked him, because we hung out together for a couple of days in Florida, and he's a former Mr. Olympia competitor, top bodybuilder in the world. And I said, "Did you feel good at 300 pounds?" And he was like, "No. I felt awful. It's awful. The constant,
you're just crushing your body, man.
Oh, and the bloating, the eating. What people don't realize, forget about the working out. It's like you've got to be shoveling food in your mouth all the time.
Honestly, man, and it's so unhealthy for your heart. It has to pump blood to all your muscles constantly. Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we don't know this for sure, but my take on, I rarely give my opinion, because I try and just look at academic research, but there won't ever be academic research on what is more likely to kill people, steroids or the existence of a gross amount of muscle. But I believe it is the latter. I don't think it's the anabolic chemical at all. I think it's the fact that they're carrying around 300 pounds of muscle. Mm-hmm. And a 300-pound obese person doesn't have vascularity in his body fat. So even though that person has health challenges, clearly, it's not the same as your heart having to pump blood to 300 pounds of firing muscle.
Demand. It's just a different physiological response.
Yeah, you're just not supposed to be that big.
Right.
So
it is so. You just look at these guys. Like, does that muscle even exist on me? You're like looking at yourself. Like, what is that? I mean, obviously we know.
A couple of things they do, like the size of quadriceps in bodybuilders is just like, it's just
doesn't make sense.
Like, what are you doing? You look. Their quads are bigger than their waist, and they have big waists. They don't have narrow, abdomen. And then the other thing is the lats, like those thick, fat lats. You just look at them and you're like, what is that? Why?
Wings, man.
Like, are you melting? You get stung by a bee? You having a bad reaction? I don't get it. It's just not. It's not. It looks just.
So are you having some bodybuilders that kind of like transform and like kind of like transition over to X3? And then, like, but are they like, have you had people that?
It's really hard. Great question. It's really hard to get people. So like, I started saying, I think when I first launched X3, it was like, okay, you're going to get incredible results out of this, better than weight training. And so I had a couple of professional athletes listen to me and they're like, everything you're saying really does make a lot of sense. And you've got clinical references, and I read those, and some of these guys are really smart guys. Because they want to know. They want the answers. They don't want to just be told what to do. It's their life. So, like that, they want to know the answer. So like they're looking at what's going on. Phil Hernon is a great example of somebody who reads science. He was 1990, either 5 or 6 Mr. USA, but super smart guy. And he was listening to everything I was saying, but still very apprehensive. Like, gosh, bands, like, isn't that what just, girls do? Like, isn't that like some yoga? And then, I showed up, I went and hung out with Phil for a couple of days, and I showed up with this, and he was like, okay, like he couldn't even come close to that one. He's got some shoulder issues and stuff like that. So he went a little bit lighter, but it was just like, okay, now I get it. And so a lot of what's difficult that people see, like our sales, our advertising is all in, videos about that big on your phone. It's really hard to see like the quality or the outputs of the device. And then another thing, I can't really like do a call out and say, this is 500 pounds, because then anyone who can't currently lift 500 pounds is like, oh, well, that's not for me.
Well, I can't do that. Yeah.
Right. So it's a larger conversation. It's an education. And what really just connects with most people is they just see others using it and they go, wow, that guy's really he's really doing a real workout. That looks like it's an incredible workout.
Well, I mean, and people look at you, John. I mean, you're a big dude. Like, you look great, man. Like you with the face of the company, like showing it off. It's like, oh, I guess I can be like him, Like, so.
And I put on all this muscle. I put on 45 pounds of muscle after turning 40.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
I don't know anybody who's managed to do that.
Well, you've been into like training and stuff because you were a rugby player, right?
Yep.
So like you probably tried training these traditional ways over and over again, and it's like whatever, blah blah blah, bro science this and bro science that. But I mean, it's cool that you've seen these results even from your own product, like after the age of 40, man. Like that's cool.
Yeah, it was very exciting to be able to. Well, once coming to that conclusion that really weightlifting is probably like the worst thing we can do. What we need is a weight that changes as we move. So, and that was sort of the thesis to what was going to be the development project of the device. First one I built just for myself because I travel. I fly 200,000 miles a year. So, and that being a scientist and having multiple inventions, like I got to go and speak at medical congresses, and I'm going to Greece in 3 days to launch OSTEOSTRONG there. And I've got every day I'm there. I've got lectures to give to different physician groups. And so I built myself an X3, which looked a little bit like this. It was it's actually made of aluminum with a solid steel core, but and then a ground plate, which it was a pressed piece of steel, which that thing sucked. It destroyed any floor operator. Destroyed people's floors. So I had to get carpet. I learned that the hard way. And then I bought some of the heaviest latex banding I could find. I knew I couldn't use petroleum based. It had to be layered tree latex. So I started using it, and it was like every day I'd look in the mirror and I would say, like, did I wake up with like a pump or something like that? Like, did I eat something that caused me to retain water? Like, I just looked dynamite. And every day I just kept looking better and better and better, like daily changes. And so when I did some body composition testing, it was like, okay, like I'm putting on muscle faster than like anybody, especially over 40. So I'm like, and now I got to launch this product. And so I filed for patents in 160 different countries. And now all those patents are granted. So yeah, we're ready to go worldwide.
That's super cool, man. And do you owe most of the growth and the changes from the growth hormone output that you've been seeing through this? I mean, through the studies and stuff.
It's a combination. It's a combination of different hormonal responses. So there's a massive growth hormone response to stabilization firing. Right. When you're holding a weight that you really can't hold in the weaker range, but you can only, like in the overhead press, when I got the bar over my head and I'm, jackhammering because I'm holding a weight that's way higher than I could hold down here, right across my chest for the overhead press. So the weight goes from, let's say, 80 pounds to 150 pounds at the top. When I get to 150 pounds, the stabilization firing in my arm, the stabilization firing in my core, in my neck, in my spinal erectors, in my hamstrings, in my calves, all that stabilization firing in rapid succession upregulates growth hormone. And the stabilization firing plus the excessive loading causes greater stabilization firing, which is a greater growth hormone response. And there's a meta-analysis that's published on that in 2016. It's Jaquish, if anybody wants to look it up.
Yeah, I gotta look at that, man.
Yeah, it's on my website too, johnjaquish.com.
And then, so John, you're mostly doing the X3, right? You don't do cardio or anything, do you?
Nope. My growth hormone gets so high, I just get lean from doing the X3. And then now we have a growth hormone accelerator, the GH accelerator product, which you do X3, the top of the plate on the X3 plugs right in to a pressure sensitive vibration platform. So you amplify the stabilization firing even more by doing your X3 on that. And so that's what I'm doing to stay lean. My nutrition is ketogenic intermittent fasting. I'm actually writing a book on nutrition because I think there's a couple things that people are missing. Right. A couple principles between intermittent fasting, which I actually don't really want to call it intermittent fasting in my book.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, man? Go ahead and dive into that. I want to know, because you're ripped and jacked, man. I want to know I know what you're doing.
I got just a different view on quite a bit of things. Pretty much everything you eat has some sort of problem with it, right?
Right.
Think about all the conflicting research and like meat's bad, vegetables are bad, nightshades are bad.
It's always a bad side up.
Bad, like dairy's bad. Everything's bad. Right. So is that true? Well, I mean, first of all, define bad. And are we sure we're looking at the right thing? Like cholesterol is clearly not what we thought it was. And right now you go into your physician's office and they look at you have high cholesterol. And it's like, okay, that's not even the whole story. Like you don't know what you're talking about. And they look at you like, what do you mean? Like HDLs, LDLs. And I'm just like, yeah. Like, you go to school in the 1970s. Yeah. Like that's now that information's out there to the public, but it hasn't really made it through the AMA yet. They're a little like the Vatican. I think they sort of reconsider their decisions every 50 years.
Oh yeah.
It's really
if you're 1 point over 200, high cholesterol, get this statin.
Right. Yeah, and so give them a statin. Oh, that's not going to cause any problems. So, I mean, I don't want to beat up on pharmaceuticals, but I'm definitely not an anti-pharma person. But I'm interested in physical medicine first. So, and I don't think any physician should take any position other than physical medicine first. So we want to look at nutrition. We want to look at exercise interventions to try and reverse a disease state or prevent a disease state. as opposed to immediately going to pharmaceuticals. I just think that's an incorrect way of thinking.
Well, it makes no sense. We've been eating food from Earth the entire time we've been living on this planet. Like, what? I mean, I understand where medicine comes in. Emergency medicine is absolutely crucial. Yeah. Like, and even
pharmaceuticals,
you know, like antibiotics and all this other stuff. Like,
that was for diabetics, metformin is
yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, but at a certain point, it's like, hey, but at a certain point, it's like, hey, why don't we try food or something, right? I mean, it's like, duh.
This is where I was going. Like, ultimately, are there negative impacts to, and get this, just digesting in general? Yeah, there are. Like, sometimes your body needs those resources somewhere else so you can truly recover. The autophagy, the replacement of tissues in the body. That doesn't happen while you're digesting food. In fact, you typically need to wait, like, I think it's 36 or 48 hours before that happens. This is not quite landed on a definitive answer. But also, who said, like, you can't work a muscle every day and expect it to grow, right? Yeah. Like I said, the biopsy says 36 hours. So the biopsy says 36 hours. You got to wait 36 hours to wait for growth to finish before you can stimulate again. So what if our intestines were like our biceps and we're just training them 3 times a day? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Does that make any sense? You ever have to let any of that stuff rest? Maybe recover?
Yeah.
Maybe shrink?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
people forget, like, the actual process of peristalsis is like a muscle, right? Like pulling the food down, rest.
Right. So my nutrition book will be really focused on instead of just calling it fasting, it'll be like the absence of the digestive process and the benefits of that.
Absence of
also, ultimately, there's such a lack of consensus on what foods are healthy, what foods aren't, and now there's politics in the middle of it. Whereas, like, I don't know, people who want to control food supplies, like carbohydrates are cheap, and if you want to feed the masses, the idea is we need to get everybody to just eat like Twinkies and cereal. And we can feed them all for pennies.
Right.
They'll be sick, but whatever.
Well, that's why all our breakfast commercials are featuring cereal.
Right. Yeah, the margins, like refined wheat grain is literally cheaper than dirt. Like, dirt is more expensive. So they can take. You should probably write that down. It's pretty good. That's why it's like they can take one of the cheapest materials and they can turn it into what they say is great food, and they can make it addictive by putting a lot of sugars in it or a high level of sodium and sugar to mask some of the sweet taste. That's Coca-Cola right there. So, it's a shame. Like, and nobody's speaking for the alternatives to this because the margins are really low. Meat producers of America don't have margins like that. So they don't really have a budget. But now I can tell you, people who are ketogenic, the research is clear. They're healthier. Yeah. They're just healthier people.
So you're doing mostly keto right now. Are you doing, like, what is your typical day like? What do you typically eat? Do you do like one big meal? Do you want to do 2 meals?
What I recommend and what I do are 2 different things, because I'm running an experiment on myself, and many others are running a similar experiment, and I'm tracking their data too. But so what I recommend is sort of a light form of ketogenic nutrition. Vegetables, trying to get to like 2 meals that are close together towards the end of the day. And heavy in protein and fats. I think one of the problems with ketogenic nutrition is fat is almost being oversold. Like, now all of a sudden, like, people are so chasing fat that they're forgetting protein.
Right.
And, you know, if your goal is to lose weight, okay, that'll work. But if you want to put on muscle, you do have to have there's a pretty definitive study on muscle gain and what the protein requirements are. The sports performance world seems to be ignorant of this amazing piece of research, but it's really like 2.4 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is roughly 1 gram per pound. It's 2.2 versus 2.4, but you get it. So like I weigh 100 kilos, so I need 240 grams of protein in a day. So I told you what I recommended. What I actually do is I eat 1 meal a day. What
are you doing? You're doing carnivore? Is that what you're doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I have 1 meal a day. It consists of usually 2.5, 3 pounds of red meat.
Okay. What kind are you doing? Just like if you're doing lamb, what do you do? Because I'm in Wyoming, and I eat a lot of game meat. I eat elk, I eat moose. Like,
it's awesome.
Amazing, man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Elk, I was just reading about elk is just like packed with protein, man. It's just, and it tastes different. It's a sweeter taste, but it's amazing, man. It has so many B vitamins, everything that you need. So
there's a lot of really essential minerals and vitamins that we only get from meat. Like you can't get taurine from anything other than animal protein. There's a whole list of things that you just cannot get outside of eating an animal product. So, I understand what vegans are trying to do, and hey, like that, like I understand you don't want to hurt anything, but that's just not how our biochemistry is.
The thing is, man, these diets are getting way too restrictive. It was never meant to be like that. You're not supposed to just live off just plants alone. You never live like that. And when you're literally suppressing all the other things that you should be having in your body, like daily. I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. I've tried the vegan diet. I've tried almost every diet just to do it myself.
Yeah.
Right? It's an experiment.
I ran a vegan experiment for a month. It was like the worst month.
Yeah. No, it's terrible, man. Like eventually, like in the beginning, you're like, oh, this is so cool, right? You're like, you're saving money. You're like on the bandwagon. And then after a while, it's like, dude, this is the worst thing ever.
I have no energy. Well, and so here's the dirty secret to what ends up being the vegan nutrition program is you can't eat enough whole vegetables to make up for your minimum caloric, requirements, your basal metabolic rate. Which I know some people say calories don't matter. Well, they do. That's too simple of an answer that they do. They might not matter the way you think they matter, but they matter because you can't underfeed yourself and expect to thrive. Like you're suffering when you're at a caloric deficit, especially for an extended period of time, day after day after day. So if you're just eating like boiled vegetables or raw vegetables or whatever, like you're getting, hundreds, not thousands of calories. Like you just can't eat it. You just cannot swallow enough. And so what they do is they have no choice if they are to maintain just a regular sort of body weight and metabolism without being sick is they go for refined foods. Well, like some of them, that more athletic ones, can go and get refined proteins and refined fats. So there's products out there that'll do that. But what the majority of them are doing is they're going for refined carbohydrates. So, Twinkies, cake, whatever. And they think because there's no meat in it, it's healthy. And these people they're losing muscle very quickly. They're putting on body fat. Their skin's terrible because you can't function without the proper fat in the skin. Like the oil on your skin for your nails to grow, for your hair to grow. Well, not for me, but for everybody else. Like you need oils in your body. You need that. And if you're not ingesting the right things, like your body just can't make those things. And so there's women with their hair falling out who go vegan. It's a common story. Yeah. They lose a lot of hair. I don't know if it comes back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have friends, I've had people on the show that are vegans, and you know, if it works for them, that's cool and all. But you know, I think everyone's a little bit different in the way they respond to things. So if they think they're doing okay and their blood markers come back okay, that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, like whatever works, I don't know. But personally, I didn't have.
I know you don't actually believe in what you just said. Let me tell you why. You have a scientific background. Yeah. We are not all different. We're all the same. Like we have a heart, we have lungs, we have skin. How about why in a nutritional clinical trial does like one group respond one way and one group respond another way? They don't break it up and say like, well, these people who have this sort of tendency are behaving in one particular way, and this other group, like every nutritional study would just be shattered if everybody had something different that worked for them. Find out what works for you. Bullshit. I work with a really smart guy, Henry Alkire. He was one of the co-authors on that meta-analysis. There are some things where different groups of people like metabolize alcohol differently. Right, people of Asian descent versus Caucasian descent versus African descent. There's a difference. Like that may be one of the only things that's like really different about like groups of people, but like the idea like how Northern Europeans, like they do better with dairy compared to most of the world. I mean, which do you think? Yeah, ultimately it's exposure and kind of the survival of the fittest random mutations. It's really the only scientific explanation of what we know so far as to why. So, I mean, like doing better or doing worse also has mostly to do with food allergies.
Gotcha.
Like you take an IgG panel and you know what you're allergic to.
Oh, and that's one thing I get so mad about with diets and stuff, man. And people are like, "Oh, this is bad," or "I need to do this." I'm like, dude, why don't you get a lab panel, man? Then you really know what's going on with you. Right.
It just, I just clench my fist under the table when someone's like, well, everyone's different. Find out what works for you. Not true. Yeah.
So no, I do agree. With genes, have you been looking into genes with nutrition and stuff like that? I know you're doing a lot of research. Have you been looking into that? Have you seen correlation?
Like we don't have enough information to say like there's one particular genetic makeup that's like better with one thing or another. Like the only thing that I can say like that's a really good guideline to what an individual should do is take an IgG panel. Right. Some of the surprises that on an IgG panel, like I took one, turns out I'm allergic to peaches and celery.
Isn't that interesting?
Bananas and watermelon. And about it.
I've done the same thing on some of my patients, and they were allergic to like salmon, avocado, some of the quote healthiest foods, right? Sure, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter.
They're all upset about it.
You're allergic, yeah. Yeah, it's like tough, man. Yeah.
Yeah, you're allergic to the grass. Don't be a landscaper.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah. But that's just allergies. That's not everybody's different. You just have different allergies. I also think like there's a lot of links to allergies and different chemicals that we've been putting in different things. So like, is it really an allergy, or have we poisoned ourselves somehow to make us intolerant of certain things? And that is an interesting theory. That'll have to go.
Yeah, with just the water supply, man. We have women flushing tampons down the toilet. Our water has been flooded with estrogen and just nasty chemicals, man. And so it's no wonder why we're so toxic, man. We're so allergic to all these things. It's like, well, treat our earth like shit. Or treat our food like crap too. I mean, like, I'm not like a super environmentalist, but you just got to look around sometimes and say, hey man, like we're real toxic.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We'll get a better understanding and be able to. I do think, and this is probably a controversial statement, I do think ultimately what's going to rescue us from this is not smaller organic farms. It'll be big farming.
Right.
They'll just figure out how to do it right, and then they'll do it on a massive scale. And the only country that really does that the best is us. So I think it'll be like, okay, like a lot of these genetically engineered vegetables are like, we got to get rid of those, and a lot of these other things. But ultimately, our country, the United States, knows how to farm. And I think when a few adjustments are made, all food products, all meats or vegetables will just come out of this country just spectacularly. I have a lot of confidence in our Department of Agriculture. Which, by the way, part of this book, I'm looking to debunk a lot of the social media myths about like meats, like McDonald's meat is whatever percentage soy and preservatives, and it's made out of some chemical crap. Never been true. That was never true. Now, McDonald's doesn't want to defend itself. I have a friend that is an executive there, and she was an executive. She actually just recently got a job with a different big restaurant group. They won't defend themselves because that won't get covered. The additional criticism of them defending themselves will be what gets the press. So it's like they're bad no matter what because they make inexpensive food that's targeted at kids. So like so many of these things that are said about McDonald's, and mothers are out there saying, well, people ought to be in jail who are in charge of that thing. False. Didn't do anything wrong. And the Department of Agriculture and the FDA, they really make sure that like foods aren't horrible. I would say the bigger issues in nutrition today are like corn subsidies. We put corn in everything because we make corn super cheap, and now with high fructose corn syrup, like that's garbage. Vegetable oil is garbage, but like you can avoid those.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so like ultimately, like they're going to do what the U.S. Department of Agriculture tells them is okay. And like McDonald's, for example, and there are other fast food chains that are very responsible about their meat production. If somebody gets sick and they had a burger and they say, I think it was the burger, McDonald's can track that burger back to the cow and get the medical history on that cow. Yeah.
That's pretty intense, man.
Well, they had to be that way because even though they're not going to have like
a attack,
they don't want to be falsely accused of hurting anybody. Yeah. And they have traditionally been falsely accused. So they're just not going to put up with it anymore. I don't blame them.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting take, man. I'm interested in reading your book, man. When is that? You're probably in the process now, obviously. When is that coming out?
It's just in like sort of forward right now. Yeah, it's. I'll give myself. So what I do is, like, in an effort to get things done, what I do is I set a goal for myself, and then I tell everybody, like, it's coming out this day. Because now I've painted myself in a corner and I have to do it. Yeah. So it's like I'm going to embarrass myself if I don't.
Great. Oh, that's great, man.
Technique. Yeah. Like I did that with my book. I told everybody when my book was coming out, Osteogenic Loading, when my book was coming out, like, oh, yep, like January 2012, coming out. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I got to finish it now.
You have no choice.
I have no choice. I told everyone I know.
That's awesome. Yeah, you gotta have deadlines in life, man, or else you're not gonna get it done, right?
Yeah, even if you set them yourself.
Yeah. So John, what other research findings are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What kind of studies are you working on right now? Whether that's human performance, exercise science. Like, are there certain things you're working on right now?
There are. I'm working on a course with the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. They're the sort of birthplace of wellness. This is the top university for preventative care. And I'm working on delivering a course. I'll be a professor of the course. Yeah, which is really about like medical device creation, engineering, marketing, production, building cases for efficacy. It's going to be a really exciting course. So that's one thing I'm working on. I'm also working on some myostatin research. That's an anti-growth factor. So the more myostatin you have, the less muscle you're able to gain. So by learning more about that and by learning more how to control it, we can really change how much muscle we can hold. And I have enough evidence. I just don't want to talk about it until it's produced and published. Yeah. That we really can do a lot with myostatin. I believe that like with some of the protocols I'm working on, individuals can achieve new levels of muscular power and strength and speed and size with what I'm discovering about myostatin. Yeah, but it's just like everything else. It's physical medicine interventions and then looking at growth factors in the body.
That's cool, man. No, I mean, with X3 alone, man, you're doing some really cool stuff. So I'm actually going to need to get an X3 because, you know, I've been looking at it for a year or so, and I'm on the traditional path of going to the gym, right?
If you go, how old are you?
28.
28. Okay. So you know what injury feels like. You told me about your knees when you're squatting 400 pounds. Anybody, the people who it just doesn't speak their language are like the teenagers who just haven't been injured. They've never felt a tender joint. Basically, they're not strong enough to be using weights that are putting too much stress on joints. They haven't even built like sort of their like adult strength yet. So like most of my trolls are just kids. They're just like high school kids who they look at what some bodybuilder does and they figure in 6 months they'll put on 100 pounds of muscle and they'll look just like that guy in the magazine. And everybody who's not doing what he does is an idiot. Teenagers are great. They have all the answers. So what I see is that anybody who's had just a little bit of joint pain when they're lifting and they realize this is not sustainable, your words, those are the people who are really attracted to X3. And they get like ridiculous results. We're just about to launch a new website, which has before and after pictures, testimonials, pro athletes using it. I got Forrest Griffin using it, former light heavyweight champion of the world. We were seeing outstanding results, better than anything people see with weights. And I promise you, if you give this thing like a month trial, you use it exclusively for a month and just quit lifting weights, I don't think you'll ever lift a weight again.
I'm gonna have to do it, man.
That's a challenge. Yeah. But like once you feel the fatigue and then see the growth by day in the mirror, and you're a lean guy, you'll see it. Some of the people who aren't so lean, they don't see the growth day by day.
Right.
If you're leaner, you'll actually see changes in the musculature day by day or week by week or whatever. Right. And you'll have your buddies will be like, "What are you doing? Like you look totally different." Yeah. You know, people who have known the last couple of years, like I went to a fraternity reunion not that long ago. Guys who had, they hadn't seen me, they saw me last year, and I was already well on my way of this journey. And it's just like, again, like we can't even believe that's you.
That's so cool, man. Yeah. Because right now I'd say I'm at like 8-9% body fat. So like you're saying, I mean, if I test this out, I'll probably be even more shredded, and people are like, "What the hell are you doing, man?"
Yeah, you put on muscular size too.
Yeah, well, sweet, man. Well, so John, I have 3 more questions. It's the same 3 questions I ask at the very end of the podcast.
Okay.
The first one is, if the world was ending today, and you could eat anything for your last meal, what would it be? Literally anything at all.
Well, you'd eat anything. Probably be a 3-pound ribeye.
Nice. You have
Yeah.
any sides with that?
Nope.
3-pound ribeye.
Yeah. Anything else is just in the way
Okay,
of my food going into my mouth or my digestive process.
Gotcha. All right, cool, man. Now, if you had one last week to live and you were in perfect health, you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?
This is a pretty dark set of questions. You know
All
something
right.
that the rest of us don't? Like the world's
Maybe,
ending.
man. Maybe. You'll see.
Where would I write? Yeah, well, 2 weeks from now, I'm going.
They're designed to give you the best answer from someone if it was their last day and week, because that's truly what they desire, right? So,
Sure.
yeah. So
Last
where would
week?
you go?
Uh,
If you can go an entire week in one place, you could go from one place for an entire week, place to place. Totally up to you.
Summer or winter time, like now?
Yeah.
Probably spend the week skiing.
So you like skiing? So you like the winter times more than like summer?
Well, if it were summer, I probably would have said, Hawaii. But
Okay.
yeah, that's a pretty cliche answer, but it's nice.
Hey man, you like what you like, right? You've
Yeah.
been there before, Hawaii?
No, yeah. Hawaii's great.
Oh, okay. I've never been there, man. I got to go. I'm stuck in the snow over here, man. We just got 3 feet of snow here in Wyoming. Terrible. All right. So last question, John, is if you had one piece of advice for anyone out there listening to live a better life, what would it be? Anything at all?
I would say it's trying to figure out knowing what you're unaware of is probably the best piece of advice, because a lot of people, the Dunning-Kruger research, 1995. It's a great story based on intelligence, so intelligence testing, and then perceived ability of competency. And what it showed was the people who were of very low intelligence had a very high level of confidence in their work. And whereas the people with very high intelligence, they maybe it wasn't even as high as the unintelligent people, but because they understand that they know certain things and they also don't know certain things. So they're very aware of sort of the entire understanding, and how one human does not have an entire understanding of everything. So that they have a really good picture of that in their head. And the scary thing is, basically the dumbest people had the strongest convictions. The dumbest people thought they were the most correct.
That is very interesting. I could see that though.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, who cares about what these people think? I'm just going to.
Well, it's like when I read that, I'm like, that's like the end of democracy right there.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like every time I look at politics and I'm frustrated, I'm like, there's that study.
Yeah, so funny, man.
Like it doesn't even matter like what, like I'm not a particularly like one-sided person,
right?
But when I look at that research, and I think like I see people reacting or speaking, or even people in Congress, especially lately, I've seen some people just say things that are like, you don't even understand your job. Unreal. But who elected them is the people who have very strong convictions. Really stupid people. Dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous that it's amazing. Democracy has got us some really great things, like knowing this, because like people can be completely misled based on this. So it's I would say to anybody, be aware of what you're not aware of.
Cool. I love that answer, man.
Yes.
So John, where can people go to learn more about you and your products? Like, I mean, you got X3 and OSTEOSTRONG. Where do you want them to go?
X3bar.com is kind of the information for both. If you really want to dive deep into my science, it's johnjaquish.com. But then I also give a lot of kind of free advice on a daily basis via Instagram and Facebook. So following like at DrJaquish at Dr. Jaquish on either Facebook or yes, that does work on Facebook and Instagram. So there's that, and then x3bar.com. But like if you want to sort of subscribe to my YouTube channel at Jaquish Biomedical. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, John. Well, thanks so much for being on, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thomas, thanks.
For Unleashed Human listeners today, you can get $50 off your new X3 bar today by going to x3bar.com and using the promo code UNLEASHED at checkout and get $50 off your order. If you are looking to get jacked, lose weight, save money on gym memberships, get stronger, and increase growth hormone, the X3 bar is your answer. Go to x3bar.com and type in Unleashed to get yours now. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I would love it if you could share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear this content. Remember, don't be selfish, share the relish. Many people don't even know podcasts exist, and I do these so that people can hear things that they may have never learned if they didn't hear this. I would be so grateful if you could rate, review, and even subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on Instagram at The Unleashed Human and send me a direct message. I am more than willing to answer anything you have or to help you with anything that you have going on in your life. I hope you have an amazing day and you are becoming an unleashed human every single second, minute, and hour of your life. Remember, it is your life. Choose to live it unleashed. Love you guys. See you on the next episode.